Have you ever failed so badly that you thought your life was over? Have you ever watched everything you built, your work, your dreams, your name, collapse in front of you? And when it did anyone stay? The city never sleeps. Cars move, people rush, lights never stop flickering. But for David Carter, time had already stopped. A year ago, he was the man everyone admired, a 42-year-old factory owner with 300 workers, a big house, and the kind of confidence that made others follow. He had friends in every restaurant, every deal, every party. Now, all he had left were cheap bottles of whiskey, lined up like silent witnesses to his fall. The table was buried under piles of unpaid bills. The air smelled of dust, regret, and something dying quietly inside him. Mornings no longer began, they just continued, grey, heavy, and endless. He'd wake up to the same chaos, half-empty glasses, unopened letters, and a wife trying to smile through her own exhaustion. The man who once signed paychecks now couldn't pay his own light bill. The phone that used to ring non-stop sat in perfect silence. When success leaves, it doesn't say goodbye, it just slips out in the middle of the night and takes your confidence with it. This is the story of how David Carter lost everything and found something far greater than he ever imagined. It started with a mistake he didn't see coming, one bad investment, one partner's betrayal, and the dominoes began to fall. The factory closed, the machines stopped, the workers left. Just a rough patch, David told himself. But months passed and the patch became a pit. He called his old friends, the ones who once toasted his name. Most didn't answer. Some said they were busy. Others simply vanished. Even the people he'd helped rise in business avoided his eyes. It hurt more than the loss of money. It was the loss of faith. At home, Anna, his wife, stayed strong. She sold jewelry, took cleaning jobs, and hid her exhaustion behind soft smiles. "Don't worry," she'd whisper, "we'll make it through." But David didn't hear her anymore. He heard only the echo of his own failure. One glass to escape the reality he couldn't face. Then two, then three, until the burn in his throat felt easier than the weight in his heart. The bottles piled up on the floor like broken promises. He stopped shaving, just sat there and drank. Sometimes he'd sit in the dark, staring at nothing, whispering, "What's the point anymore?" But in another room, Anna kept moving. While David drowned, she refused to sink. She took every job she could find, cleaning offices by day, waiting tables by night. Her hands cracked from detergent, her body ached from exhaustion, but she never complained, because she knew if she fell too, their family would shatter completely. There were nights she came home and found him asleep on the couch, the TV flickering over his tired face. She'd cover him with a blanket, touch his hair gently and whisper, "I'll hold us together until you can stand again." But each day it grew harder. Harder to carry a man who no longer wanted to be saved. At night, when the house was quiet, David would stumble out into the city, to the park near their old neighborhood. He'd sit on a rusted bench, beer in hand, staring at the glowing skyline that used to belong to him. It was the only place where no one asked questions, and that's where he saw him. An old man, grey beard, worn-out jacket, shoes barely holding together. He sat beneath a flickering streetlight, feeding pigeons, humming softly to himself. There was something strange about him, something David couldn't understand. The man had nothing, yet he was smiling. Every night, that smile returned, calm, unshaken, untouchable. Until one evening, David muttered under his breath, "How can anyone like that look so happy?" One rainy evening, David sat on his bench, beer can in hand. The old man shuffled by, holding a soaked paper bag of breadcrumbs. "Still drinking your sadness, friend?" the man asked kindly. David glared. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me," the old man said, sitting down beside him. David sighed. "I lost everything. Business, money, friends. My life's over." The man chuckled softly. "Funny, I said the same thing 15 years ago." David turned. "You?" "Yep," the old man nodded. "I was rich once. Real estate, cars, the works. Thought I owned the world. Then life reminded me I didn't." "What happened?" David asked. "I lost it all. Tried to end it once. But then I realized I was never really living. I was just managing noise." David frowned. "So now you're, what, happy being homeless?" The man smiled. "Happier than when I had walls. I own nothing, but I'm free. The world doesn't owe me calm. I create it here." He tapped his chest. David shook his head. "That's easy to say, when you've given up." The man laughed softly. "No, my friend. It's hard, because I stopped giving up on myself." They sat in silence, the rain softening. For the first time in months, David wasn't angry. He was curious. A few days passed. Every evening, David still returned to that same park. The same bench, the same beer in hand, the same tired eyes staring at nothing. But something was different. The old man wasn't there. His spot beneath the tree was empty. The pigeons still gathered, waiting for crumbs that would never come. David sat there for hours, glancing around, half expecting that calm voice to appear again. But only the wind answered. The next day, he came back once more, less drunk this time, and asked the street sweeper nearby, "Hey, have you seen the old man who used to sit here? Grey beard, patched coat." The man paused his broom, sighed, and said quietly, "You mean old Henry? He passed away 2 nights ago." "Heart attack," they said. "Died right there, on that bench." David froze. The world seemed to go silent, as if even the city held its breath. The sweeper hesitated, then added, "They said when they found him, he looked peaceful, like he was sleeping." With a smile on his face, David sat down slowly, eyes fixed on the empty bench beside him. That smile, that quiet, unshakable peace, wouldn't leave his mind. For the first time in a long while, he didn't open a bottle. He just sat there, listening to the rain begin to fall, whispering softly, "Maybe peace isn't about what you have. Maybe it's about how you live." That night, he went home. He stood in front of the kitchen cabinet, bottles lined up like old ghosts, and one by one, he poured them down the sink. Anna appeared at the doorway, startled. "David, what are you doing?" He looked at her eyes, steady, voice calm. "I met a man who had nothing, but he still smiled. He found peace before he died. Maybe it's time I try to live the same way." Anna's eyes filled with tears. She stepped closer, wrapped her arms around him, and whispered, "I knew you'd come back to me." The next morning, the house smelled of coffee instead of alcohol. David woke early, shaved, and helped Anna make breakfast. For the first time in months, there was light in his eyes, faint but real. Days passed. He began to read again, little by little. Books about calm, discipline, and how to rebuild from the ashes. Each page was like a small brick, slowly rebuilding the man he had lost. But the past still had its price. Bills, debts, the weight of everything he had ignored for a year. One evening, David sat beside Anna at the kitchen table, papers scattered everywhere. He took a deep breath. "We can't keep this house," he said quietly. Anna looked up. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "We don't need space we can't afford. We need peace we can live in." A few weeks later, the house that once echoed with parties and pride was sold. They used the money to pay off the debts, every last one. When it was over, only a small amount remained. But for the first time in years, they were free. They moved into a modest little apartment on Maple Street. Small kitchen, thin walls, a single window that caught the morning light. And yet, it felt warmer than their old mansion ever did. With what was left, Anna suggested something simple. Why don't we open a bakery? You always loved working with your hands. At first, David hesitated, but the thought of creating instead of destroying, of kneading dough instead of drowning in regret, felt like the right kind of work. So they rented a small corner shop. No grand opening, no banners, just the smell of fresh bread and two people starting over. They named it the Morning Bakery. David worked the dough, hands firm but gentle. Anna greeted customers with the same warmth that once kept their family alive. Their young son helped paint the sign above the door. Crooked letters, bright yellow paint, full of hope. Business was modest, but laughter returned to their home. Each loaf carried warmth, not from success, but from gratitude. At night, after closing, David would sometimes walk across the street to the park. The bench was still there, old, worn, waiting. He'd sit down, look up at the stars, and whisper softly, "Thank you, old man." He no longer dreamed of rebuilding his empire. He was rebuilding something far greater, his soul. And in the quiet hum of the oven, mixed with the scent of rising dough, David Carter finally found the kind of peace no fortune could ever buy. In the end, life didn't destroy David, it stripped him. It took away everything he once used to define himself, so he could finally see who he really was. When the company fell, when the friends vanished, when pride broke into dust, he discovered the one thing the storm couldn't touch: the mind. All his life, David thought control meant power. Money in the bank, people who listened, plans that worked. But control was never out there. It was always inside, in the space between pain and reaction, between loss and acceptance. He learned that peace isn't the prize at the end of success. It's the quiet that begins when you stop fighting the present. And as he kneaded the dough each morning, he understood something the old man had tried to tell him. You can't control the wind, but you can steady your hands. You can't rewrite the past, but you can start again gently, honestly, today. Sometimes life takes everything from you, not to punish you, but to wake you up. It empties your hands, so your heart can feel again. If you're standing in your own ruins right now, if the world you built has fallen apart, remember this: you're still breathing, and that means you still have a chance to start smaller, live slower, love deeper, a chance to rebuild, not your empire, but your peace. David never became rich again, but he became whole. Every loaf he baked was a thank you. Every smile he shared was a new sunrise. So when the next storm comes, don't ask, "Why me?" Ask, "What can this teach me?" Because sometimes losing everything is how you finally find yourself. If this story touched you, share it with someone who's still fighting their way through the dark. Leave a comment. What's your second chance story? And remember, even the smallest spark of hope can light a life again.